Okay, let's begin with a short invocation. Please close your eyes. Inhale and exhale slowly and deeply. Relax your body. If you feel any pain or discomfort at any area of your body, bring your awareness to that area and mentally say, I let go. I am not the body. The body is just a vehicle of the soul. I am the soul. I am that I am. Visualize your whole body disintegrate and disappear. All the cells and organs in your body disintegrate and disappear. All the pain and discomfort disintegrate and disappear. What remains is just brilliant white light. Inhale slowly and deeply. Exhale slowly and deeply. Now bring your awareness higher to your thoughts and your emotions. Just observe each and every thought that comes to your mind and fades away. Mentally say, I am not my thoughts. I am not my emotions. Thoughts and emotions are just products of the soul. I am the soul. I am that I am. Visualize all your thoughts and emotions disintegrate and disappear. All your fears, worries, frustrations disintegrate and disappear. What remains is just brilliant white light. Inhale slowly and deeply. Exhale slowly and deeply. Bring your awareness to your crown chakra and mentally say to the Supreme Being, Divine Father, Divine Mother, to Grandmaster Shuakok Sui, Lord Mahaguruji Mailing, and all the great ones, all the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, and spiritual helpers. Thank you for all of your priceless blessings, for divine light, divine love, and divine power. Divine guidance, help and protection, inner healing and physical healing, good health and happiness, prosperity and abundance, spirituality and illumination. Thank you in full faith. Thank you for illuminating our minds to understand the Causal Body book better. To all the masters of Theosophy, thank you so much for all of your priceless blessings. With thanks and in full faith. Inhale slowly, inhale all the blessings. Exhale slowly and be aware of your whole body. Inhale slowly. Exhale slowly. Inhale slowly. Inhale all the blessings. And exhale slowly. Now please be aware of the presence of each and every person in this session and mentally say, Namaste. Thank you for being here. And when you are comfortable, gently open your eyes with a big smile. Atma Namaste. Welcome to the next session of the book. So let's start. Okay, so we already studied up to chapter 14. Now chapter 15 will be about the functions of the causal body. So the causal body owes its name to the fact that in it reside the causes which manifest themselves as effects in the lower planes. For it is the experience of past lives stored in the causal body, which are the cause of the general attitude taken up towards life and the actions undertaken. In Sanskrit, the causal body is known as the Karana Sharira, Karana meaning cause. Okay, so that's why the name is called causal body. So first of all, it's connected with the causes, with the experiences of past life, with the karma, which creates the result or effects in the future incarnations. And also, as long as there is a cause or a lesson to learn, we will keep incarnating. Okay, once all the lessons are learned and there is no more lesson to learn, no more karma to work out, we don't need to incarnate anymore. And that is when we have already reached illumination. So the causal body has two main functions. Number one, to act as a vehicle for the ego. The causal body is the body of manas, the form aspect of the individual, the true man, the thinker. So causal body is not the ego. The causal body is the vehicle for the ego. Now, ego in Theosophy books means the higher soul. We shouldn't um, confuse it with the term ego we use in modern psychology. This ego means higher soul. So the causal body is the vehicle for the higher soul. To act, number two, to act as a receptacle or storehouse for the essence of the man's experiences in his various incarnations. Okay, so whatever experiences we have in every incarnation will be gathered and stored in the causal body. So these are the two main functions. Number one, to be the vehicle for the higher soul, and number two, to be a storehouse for the essence of the experiences that we have in every incarnation. Now, the causal body is that into which is woven everything which can endure and in which are stored the germs of qualities to be carried over to the next incarnation. Hence, one sees that the lower manifestation of man, for example, the expression in his mental, astral, and physical bodies, depends ultimately upon the growth and development of the real man himself, the one for whom the hour never strikes. As we have seen in chapter 11, there is no man, no real human being until the causal body comes into existence. So if you remember, we said that there is a concept of group soul, and only when individualization happens, or only when the causal body appears, the individualization happens. So every individual being must necessarily have a causal body. It is in fact the possession of a causal body which constitutes individuality. Okay, so when the point in our evolution reaches that the causal body gets created, then individualization happens. Means for every higher soul, there will be one incarnated soul. No more group souls. Preceding the birth of the causal body is devoted to developing the building the matter of the physical, astral, and lower mental planes until it becomes a fit habitation for the divine spirit to dwell in as a man. The causal body, as said, is the receptacle of all that is enduring, only that which is noble and harmonious, and in accordance with the law of spirit. For every great and noble thought, every pure and lofty emotion is carried up and its essence worked into the substance of the causal body. Hence, the condition of the causal body is a true register, the only true register of the growth of man, of the stage of evolution to which he has attained. Okay, so later we will discuss this more also. Our lower thoughts, lower emotions, unwholesome thoughts and emotions will not reach to the causal body. Only the good ones, the harmonious ones will reach to the causal body and help in the evolution of the causal body. So for the causal body, there is no evil thought in it. So it's either good thoughts or gap. All the various bodies of man should be regarded as casings or vehicles enabling the self to function uh, some definite region of the universe, in some definite region of the universe. Just as a man may use a carriage on land, a ship on the sea, a balloon in the air to travel from one place to another, and yet in all places remain himself, so does the self, the real man, utilize his various bodies, each for its appropriate purposes, yet remains all the time himself, no matter in what vehicle he may be functioning at any given moment. Okay, so in every incarnation, we will um, acquiring new vehicles, new physical body, new emotional body, new mental body. But the higher soul remains the same. So that's why it's called the true self. And all the other bodies are like the vehicles that we use in different planes, like and as it explained in the book, a ship on the sea, a balloon in the air. So physical body is used to experience the physical world. Emotional body is used to experience emotions. Mental body is used to experience the mental world and the mental plane. And in every incarnation, different sets of vehicles. But the higher soul remains the same as the true man or true human, actually. Relatively to the man, all these bodies are transient. They are his instruments or servants. They wear out and are renewed time after time and adapted to his varying needs and his ever growing power. So, this is exactly what we just discussed. So, in every incarnation, we will use different sets of vehicles, different sets of bodies based on what experiences we are about to have and what lessons we supposed to learn. More specifically, because mind is fundamentally dual in its functioning, so man needs and is provided with two mind bodies. As we saw in the mental body serves for the concrete mind, which deals with concrete thoughts. The causal body, similarly, is the organ for abstract thinking. Okay, so since our mind functions in two different ways or is dual, has a dual function. One function is concrete thinking, another function is abstract thinking. So that's why the mental world itself is divided into lower mental and higher mental. So the four lower subplanes of the mental body is called the lower mental, and the vehicle used to experience concrete thought in that is mental body. The three higher subplanes of the mental body is the mental plane is called higher mental, and it's the and the medium used to experience the abstract thinking is the causal body. Even in one brief earth life, we distinguish between the knowledge we acquire and the wisdom we gradually, often too rarely, distill from that knowledge. Wisdom is the fruitage of a life's experience, the crowning possession of the aged. In a much fuller and richer sense, wisdom is the fruitage of many incarnations, the produce of much experience and knowledge. In the thinker, thus, the store of experiences reaped in our past lives, harvested through many rebirths. Okay, so in one life also, we distinguish between knowledge and wisdom. So, knowledge is the information or what is acquired after reading and studying, but wisdom um, is gradually achieved through experience over one lifetime and actually several lifetimes. So that is also one of the differences between the mental body and the causal body. One is knowledge, one is wisdom. Okay, mental body helps us to acquire knowledge, but causal body is connected with wisdom. Mental body is connected with concrete thinking. Causal body is connected with abstract thinking. Okay, so this table just shows the name of these planes. So the stula principle in man, physical. Kosha or sheath is called Annamaya Kosha or food sheath. Principle of prana, the kosha or sheath is called Pranamaya Kosha. vitality sheath. Lower manas and kama is called manomaya kosha or feeling sheath. Higher manas, vijnana maya kosha, discriminating sheath. And buddhi principle, the kosha is anandamaya kosha or bliss sheath. In the word vijnana maya kosha, the particle V implies the discriminating, separating, and arranging of things, for that is the peculiar function of this sheath. The Manomaya Kosha collects and elaborates. The Vijnamaya Kosha arranges and discriminates. The lower bodies receive and deal with sensations, perceptions, the making and elaborating of ideas, but it is the work of the causal body to arrange these, discriminate between them, and perform the work of abstract reasoning from them, dealing with pure ideas separated from the concrete presentations. Okay, so you saw the bodies here: Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha. All of these help us to receive information. Okay, Vijnamaya Kosha help us to discriminate. All the lower bodies help us to receive and deal with sensations, perceptions, the making and elaborating of ideas, etc. And the causal body arrange them, discriminate between them, and performs the work of abstract reasoning from them. So in the causal body, we thus have the abstract, not the concrete. The pure internal working, no longer confused by the senses, nor in any way interfered with the outer world. Here there is pure intelligence, clear vision, intelligence unmoved by the senses, intelligence tranquil, strong, serene. Okay, so other bodies help us to gather information, okay, through physical senses, through emotions, through concrete thinking, and then the causal body helps to discriminate, arrange them properly, and then conclude or create reasoning from them. Okay, and um, it's not what you call confused by the senses, by the outer world, but it's serene, it's tranquil, it's strong, and it's clear. So in the causal body also lies the creative power of meditation, the energies that grow out of one-pointed contemplation. This is the creative sheath of man. For manas in man corresponds in the cosmos to Mahat, the universal mind, divine ideation, the molding, directing force, which is the creative power from which all comes forth. Okay, Mahat is known as universal mind. So in this sheath of man exist all forms that can come forth, to which objective reality may be given by this creative power. Intelligence in man is thus, as said, the reflection of Brahma, of the universal mind, the creative energy. The creative faculty of imagination in man, which at present works in subtle matter, will, when man becomes perfect, work in grosser matter as well. Because, as said, the imaginative power in man is the reflection of the power that created the universe. Brahma meditated, and all forms came forth. So, in the creative power of mind lies every possibility of form. Okay, now creative mind here means the mind that can create. So Brahma meditated and all forms came forth. In the creative power of mind lies every possibility of form. Now, higher manas is divine because it has positive thought, which is Kriya Shakti, the power of doing things. Okay, so Higher manas, which is the three higher subplanes of the mental plane, is divine because it has positive thought. Now, Kriya Shakti means using the power of thought to create things. Okay, so manas, mind, is thus by its very nature activity. Basically, thought power leads to action, leads to activity. That's why it's called creative power. Creative thinking means thinking which leads to creation. So all work is really done by thought power. The sculptor's hand does not do the work, but the thought power directing that hand does it. For it is a truism to say that thought precedes action. Okay, so means thought basically sometimes um, there is a discussion whether thought leads to action or will leads to action. Will affects the thought, thought affects action. So means thought is connected with action. So that is called Kriya Shakti, the power of doing things using the thought power. Whilst there are occasions on which a man acts, as we say, without thinking, yet even so, his action is the result of previous thought. He has set up a habit of thought along a certain line and acts instinctively in arrangement with that line of thought. Okay, so the power of Kriya Shakti, the power of doing things using the power of thought or creating action using the power of thought is connected with higher manas. The outgoing energy of Atma working in the causal body is the force which dominates and molds everything that is external to it. The outgoing energy of Atma working in the Manomaya Kosha, on the other hand, is desire. And its characteristics is that it is attracted by external objects and its direction is governed from without. Okay, so the energy of the Atma working in the causal body is the force that dominates and molds everything that is external to it. The outgoing energy of Atma working in the Manomaya Kosha, on the other hand, is desire. And its characteristic is that it is attracted by external objects and its direction is governed from without. But Atma working in a causal body is will, dealing no longer with choice directed from without, but with choice initiated from within, molded on the internal images by a process of discriminative reflection. Okay, so desire is connected with outside external objects. Okay, so means the direction is governed from without, is created by observing or experiencing the external objects, the external world. But Atma working in the causal body is will. This is governed from within, not from without. Thus, the outgoing energy is in the causal body guided from within in its direction, whereas in the lower bodies it is attracted from without. So one difference between the causal body and the lower bodies is in the lower bodies, the outgoing energy is guided from without, but in the causal body is guided from within. This is the essential difference between will and desire. The will, moreover, is essentially a quality of the ego, not of the personality. Okay, so the will works from within and is essentially the quality of the higher soul, not of the personality. Personality in Theosophy language means the incarnated soul, but the desire is the quality of the incarnated soul. Will is the quality of the higher soul. The chit or intelligence aspect of the man is the first to be evolved. This is the analyzing faculty which perceives multiplicity and differences. Then comes Ananda, the wisdom, that realizes the unity of things and that accomplishes union, thus finding the joy or bliss that is at the heart of life. Lastly comes the third or highest aspect, Sat, self-existence, the unity that is beyond even union. Okay, so for human, the first quality that gets developed is the intelligence, also known as chit. After intelligence is ananda or wisdom or love aspect. And lastly is sat or self-existence or will, higher will. In the cycle of races, the fifth race is developing the chit. Okay, now we are fifth root race. We are developing the chit or the intelligence. Okay, that's why you see science is developing super fast and there is a lot of focus on science. So whatever you talk, even when you talk about meditation, it should be scientifically proven because the focus now is on developing chit or intelligence aspect of the soul. The sixth root race, which will come immediately after the fifth, will focus on developing the ananda or the union. If you remember in the study of solar system, when we were talking about root races, we said the future root race, the sixth root race who is coming, will focus a lot on unity, on love, on wisdom rather than intelligence. Okay, so they focus on unity, on oneness, on accepting everybody. And so the union or bliss aspect, the kingdom of happiness. The seventh will develop the sat or self-existence aspect or the will aspect. Okay, question, when will the sixth root race come? We don't know exactly when, but if you remember in the solar system, we said we are now in the fifth root race and going towards the sixth root race. So I think if you remember in the solar system book, we said that some appearances are already happening in Australia, in some parts of US, I think California, if I'm not mistaken. And then there was one whole chapter about six root race, how will they look and how they will act. And then they will start a community there and then they don't accept everybody there. We can go and visit, but they don't accept everybody. They walk barefooted and so on and so on. If you go back to the study of the solar system, there is one whole chapter about the sixth root race. Okay, but the focus on the sixth root race will be ananda or union. So selfish thoughts, competition as we have right now will not work anymore because it's not important who is better than the other. The importance will be on union, on accepting everybody, on inclusivity, on oneness, rather than competition and intelligence and I'm better than you, you are better than me, and things like that. Okay, and then seventh root race will focus on developing sat, which means the will aspect, the self-existence aspect. Okay, so we discussed about the function of the causal body. Now we will focus on discussing about its composition and its structure. The causal body consists of a matter of the first, second, and third subplanes of the mental plane. In ordinary people, the causal body is not yet fully active, and consequently only that matter which belongs to the third subplane is vivified. As the ego during the long course of his evolution unfolds his latent possibilities, the higher matter is gradually brought into activity But it is only in the perfected man, whom we call adepts or master, that it is developed to its fullest extent. It is difficult to describe a causal body fully because the senses belonging to the causal world are altogether different from and higher than those we employ at the physical level. In fact, the shape of all the higher bodies and as surrounding the physical body of the man extending to a distance of about 18 inches from the surface of the physical body. A human being who has just individualized from the animal kingdom has a causal body of minimum size. Okay, so initially the size is small. Once we develop it, then gradually becomes bigger. In the case of primitive man, the causal body resembles a bubble and gives the impression of being empty. It is a mere colorless film, just sufficient apparently to hold itself together and make a reincarnating entity, but no more. So it means it's um, it's like a bubble. It's not clear enough. It's like empty. There are not much colors in it, and it can only hold itself together. This comes but slowly because the activities of man in the earlier stages of his evolution are not of a character to obtain expression in matter so fine as that of the causal body. But when a man reaches the stage where he is capable either of abstract thought or of unselfish emotion, the matter of the causal body is aroused into response. So if you remember earlier, we said negative thoughts, negative emotions, selfish thoughts will not reach the causal body. So initially, very, very slowly, as the person is developing, um, and as the person is capable, becomes capable of either abstract thinking or having unselfish emotions, then the matter of the causal body will be aroused into response. So then we will start seeing some colors and some responses and some changes in the causal body. The vibrations that thus aroused show themselves in the causal body as colors, so that instead of being a mere transparent bubble, it gradually becomes a sphere filled with matter of the most lovely and delicate hues, an object beautiful beyond all conception. The student will be familiar with the meaning of the various colors from his study of the same phenomenon in the astral and mental bodies. So if you remember in the study of the astral body book and mental body book, we discussed about colors and the connection of colors with our thoughts, with our emotions. So based on what kind of thoughts, what kind of emotions we have, those those colors will start appearing in the causal body. Thus, pale rose expresses unselfish affection. Yellow indicates high intellectual power. Blue betokens devotion. Sympathy is expressed by green, and luminous lilac blue typifies the higher spirituality. So as the person starts to experience this kind of emotions and thoughts like unselfish affection, high intellectual power, devotion, and things like that, these kind of colors starts to appear in the causal body. So for unselfish affection, we will see pale rose. For in high intellectual power, we will see yellow. For devotion, we will see blue. For sympathy, we will see green. And for higher spirituality, we will see luminous lilac blue. These same colors in the denser bodies are, of course, far less delicate and also less living. Okay, so although it's the same colors, but in the causal body, it appears much more beautiful because it's like higher vibrations, it's different, more delicate. Although in the course of his evolution in the lower worlds, a man often introduces into his vehicles qualities which are undesirable and entirely inappropriate for his life as an ego, such for example as pride, irritability, sensuality, yet none of these can be expressed in the causal body. The causal body, therefore, is affected only by the three higher portions of the astral body, and the vibrations in those portions represent only good qualities. The practical effect of this is that the man can build into his ego that is nothing but good qualities. So, as we discussed earlier, also, our lower emotions, lower thoughts will not reach the causal body. Okay, but when we have higher emotions, then our higher emotions, unselfish emotions, actually can affect the causal body. So there is a diagram here, you will see it's showing the astral body and the mental body. Okay, so the four lower subplanes of the mental body represent the lower mental world. The three higher represent the causal body, the higher mental world. Okay, so you see there are some openings here. First is bigger opening, then gradually become smaller openings. Okay, and you see they're also opening upwards. Now, opening between adjacent subplanes of each plane indicate that certain of the vibrations of a given subplane can be transmitted to the subplane immediately above. So means if you are experiencing higher emotions here on these three higher subplanes of the astral body, these can affect the three higher subplanes of the mental body, which is known as the causal body. So means our unselfish emotions, our affection, love for humanity, unselfish emotions, higher emotions can actually affect the causal body in a positive way. These openings or gateways become narrower and narrower, indicating that only the finest vibrations can pass onwards to the higher levels. Okay, so only higher, very fine emotions can pass to the higher subplanes. Openings between each subplane of the astral plane and the corresponding subplane of the mental plane indicate that there is also a possibility of an astral vibration being communicated at a higher octave to the corresponding mental subplane. Okay, so the higher vibrations of each subplane in the emotional body and mental body can affect the higher subplane. So means higher thoughts in the lowest subplane can affect the second subplane, then the third one, the fourth one, like that. And then there are also openings between the astral body and the mental body. So these openings mean there is a possibility of an astral vibration being communicated at a higher octave to the corresponding mental subplane. So our highest unselfish emotions can be communicated to the causal body. As already said, the causal body of an undeveloped savage is like a gigantic soap bubble, transparent yet iridescent. It is almost empty in appearance. What little there is within it representing certain qualities which may already have been evolved within the group soul of which it previously formed a part. So you see, it's like gigantic soap bubble is transparent, but there are some colors, some vibration there, and that is the qualities developed by the group soul previously. Now, the faint indications of these rays of vibrations are observable within the young causal body as dawning gleams of color. It might perhaps have been thought that the causal body of a primitive man would be very small at first, but this is not the case. His causal body is the same size as any other. It does at later stage increase in size, but not until it has first been vivified and filled with active matter. So it's not like the causal body is very, very small in the beginning and it gets bigger, bigger, bigger every time we develop. So the size is the same only when it reaches to the point that it is vivified and filled with active matter, then only it gets bigger. The difference is in primitive man, it's almost colorless and it's like a huge bubble of like empty bubble, something like that. In the case of an average man, there is a distinct increase in the content of the great ovoid field. A certain amount of exceedingly delicate and ethereal color now exists within it, though it is still less than half filled. So this is the causal body and average man. You see now there are some colors in it, but it's like half filled. Something of the higher intellect is visible, and something of the power of devotion and unselfish love. Okay, so you see some elements of devotion, some elements of intelligence, some elements of unselfish love. There is also a faint tint of exceedingly delicate violet, which indicates the capacity of love and devotion turned towards the highest ideal, and also a faint hint of a clear green of sympathy and compassion. So you see a bit of green of sympathy, you will see what you call affection, you will see devotion, you will see intelligence a little bit. As soon as the man begins to develop in spirituality or even higher intellect, a change takes place. The real individual then begins to have a persisting character of his own, apart from that molded in each of his personalities, in turn by training and by surrounding circumstances. This character shows itself in size, color, luminosity, and definiteness of the causal body, just as that of the personality shows itself in the mental body, except that the higher vehicle is naturally subtler and more beautiful. Now, in the case of the spiritually developed man, this is an example of the causal body. An enormous change is noticed. The glorious iridescent film is now completely filled with the most lovely colors. Then you will see a lot of colors appearing in the causal body of the spiritually developed person. So these colors show higher forms of love, devotion, and sympathy, aided by an intellect refined and spiritualized, and by aspirations reaching ever towards the divine. Some of these colors have no place in the physical plane spectrum. Okay, so the colors are now shown as like physical colors because there is no other way to show them. But there is a huge difference between the colors we have in the physical plane and the colors which appear in the causal body of the spiritually developed man. The inconceivably fine and delicate matter of such a causal body is intensely alive and pulsating with living fire, forming a radiant globe of flashing colors, its high vibration sending ripples of changing hues over its surface hues, of which earth knows nothing, brilliant, soft, and luminous beyond the power of language to describe. As the soul grows, it is able to receive more and more from the inexhaustible ocean of divine spirit, which pours down through the thread as a channel. The channel expands and gives wider passage to the flood, till on the next subplane it might be imagined as a water sprout connecting earth and sky, and higher still as itself a globe, through which rushes the living spring until the causal body seems to melt into the inpouring light. As the stanza says, the thread between the watcher and his shadow becomes more strong and radiant with every change. Okay, let me show you one. Okay, there is no. Okay, through this thread connecting the divine spark and the higher soul, divine energy flows and then radiates throughout this causal body. Okay, so this thread between the watcher and his shadow becomes more strong and radiant with every change. The morning sunlight has changed into noonday glory. This is thy present will, said the flame to the spark. Thou art myself, and my image and my shadow. I have clothed myself in thee, and thou art my Vahan to the day. Be with us, when thou shalt re-become myself and others, thyself and me. So this is when the higher soul and the divine spark um, unite, means the connection becomes stronger. It was said about that in the undeveloped man, the causal body is at first almost empty, and as the man develops, the ovoid gradually fills up. When it is completely filled, not only will it commence to grow in size, but in addition, streams of force will flow out in various directions. This is, in fact, one of the grandest characteristics of the developed man, his capacity to serve as a channel for higher force. So, higher force, through this thread of life, pour down to the causal body of the developed man, and then um, is like flow out like this, streams out. And that means this person now can be used by the divine as an instrument to help other people, to channel the higher force to the rest of the world. For his attitude of helpfulness and readiness to give make it possible for the divine strength to descend upon him in a steady stream, and through him reach many who are not yet strong enough to receive it directly. So this person basically become a channel to receive the energies and then spread it to the rest of the world, to the rest of humanity who cannot receive it directly. Furthermore, from the upper part of the causal body, there ascends a crown of brilliant sparks, indicating the activity of spiritual aspiration, and of course, adding very greatly to the beauty and dignity of the man's appearance. Here it shows. Yes, the person becomes an instrument of the divine, an instrument to help manifesting the divine plan on earth. No matter how the lower man may be occupied on the physical plane, this stream of sparks rises constantly. The reason for this is that once the soul or ego of man is awakened upon his own level and is beginning to understand something of himself and his relation to the divine, he looks ever upwards to the source from which he came, quite irrespective of any activities which he may be inspiring on lower planes. Okay, this very upward rushing of spiritual aspiration, which makes so glorious a crown of the developed man, is itself the channel through which the divine power descends, so that the fuller and stronger his aspirations become, the larger is the measure of the grace from on high. The size of the causal body is many times larger than that of the physical body, and there is displayed magnificent development of the highest types of intellect, love, and devotion, great wealth of sympathy, and highest spirituality. This is the causal body of the developed man. The bands of colors are arranged now in concentric rings, while through these and exceedingly beyond them there are streams of white light radiating outwards from the center, like this. So now the colors shape in concentric circles, and then rays of light stream out, like this. The outrush of divine influence is thus enormously intensified, for the man has become an almost perfect channel for the life and power of the Logos. Not only does the glory radiate from him in white light, but all colors of the rainbow play round him in ever-changing gleams like mother of pearl. He shines upon all around him like the sun, for like that luminary, he has become a manifestation of the Logos. So when this happens, the person becomes instrument of the Logos, channel through him, through which life of or divine energy of the Logos will shine through others. So this person becomes like the sun. In one of the quotes, Grandmaster says, the sun is always there. How much light comes to us depends on us. So this master, Grandmaster, and similar spiritual teachers are like suns. If we open ourselves to them, we can receive the blessings, which shines through the divine to them and from them to us. The causal body of the adept or master has enormously increased in size and shines with a sun-like splendor far beyond all imagination in its glorious loveliness. As in the case of the causal body of an arhat, the colors no longer move in whirling clouds, but are arranged in great concentric shells, yet penetrated everywhere by radiation of divine light, always pouring forth from him as a center. Beautiful luminous light projection. It's like a mandala. Yes. Yes, Sajid is like that. So this person becomes an instrument of the divine. The causal body in this in a developed person is known also as the ogoids, means body of light, the glorified man. It is not an image of any one of his past vehicles, but contains within itself the essence of all that was best in each of them. It thus indicates more or less perfectly, as though experience it grows, what the deity means that man shall be. For as we have seen by observation of the causal vehicle, it is possible to see the stage of evolution which the man has reached. Not only can his past history be seen, but also to a considerable extent the future that lies before him. We may note, however, that after the formation of the causal body, the complexity of the prana circulating in the nervous system of the physical body much increases, and it appears to become yet more enriched in the progress of human evolution. For as the consciousness becomes active on the mental plane, the prana of that plane mingles with the lower, as the activity of consciousness is carried on the higher regions. In the causal body also, as in each of the other vehicles, there are chakras or force centers, which in addition to other functions, serve as points of connection at which force flows from one vehicle to another. Okay, so in causal body also we have the chakras or force centers. At present time, however, no information is available regarding the chakras of the causal body. So we know that the causal body also has chakras or force centers, but there is not much information available about it. Okay, so that was about the structure and composition of the causal body. Now we will discuss about the causal thought. How is causal thought different from the mental thought? What is the difference between concrete thinking and abstract thinking? The names Arupa and Rupa are given in order to indicate a certain quality of the matter of the mental plane. The lower part of it, the matter, is very readily molded by the action of human thought into definite forms. In the higher division, this does not occur. The more abstract the thought of that level expressing itself to the eye of the clairvoyant in flashes or streams. So, in the mental body, the study of the mental body book, you are familiar with the concept of thought forms. So it means whatever we think create a certain form. Okay, so this means rupa, means with form. And then we have arupa, without form. So in the causal body, when we think using the causal body, we don't create form. And when a clairvoyant wants to see them, it appears as flashes or streams. But when we think using the mental body, we create forms. We call them thought forms. On the arupa levels, the difference in the effect of thought is very marked, especially as regards the elemental essence. The disturbance set up in the Maya matter of the plane is similar, though greatly intensified in this much more refined form of matter. But in the elemental essence, no form at all is now created, and the method of action is entirely changed. Okay, so in the lower levels, lower mental levels, when we think, we create a form, thought form. In higher mental plane, when we think, we create flashes and streams, no form. On the lower subplanes, an elemental or thought form, which is there created, hovers about the person thought of and awaits a favorable opportunity of expending its energy either upon the mental body, his astral body, or even his physical body. But on the three higher subplanes, the result is a kind of lightning flash of the essence from the causal body of the thinker direct to the causal body of the object of his thought. So that while on the lower subplanes the thought is always directed to the Maya personality, on the higher subplanes we influence the reincarnating ego, the real man himself. So means when we are using the mental body and we are thinking about someone, we create a certain thought form to the person. That thought form will remain in the aura of the person, waiting for a time to discharge itself, either on the mental body or on his causal astral body, or his physical body, and create a similar thought. But when using the causal body, we think about someone else, we create like a lightning flash of essence from our causal body to the causal body of the person. Okay, so when we are using the mental body to affect someone, we affect the personality, means we affect the incarnated soul. But when we are using the causal body, we affect the higher soul of the other person. If the message has any reference to the personality, it will reach that personality only from above through the instrumentality of the causal body. So means when using the causal body, we create a thought about another person, that thought, like a lightning flash, will go to the causal body of that other person. Now, if that thought is connected with the incarnated, is related to the incarnated soul of that higher soul, through that causal body will go down to the personality or the incarnated soul. Yes? So it is said, um, it is said to be a striking sight to observe the change from an abstract or arupa idea to a concrete or rupa thought, as the idea clothes itself in the matter of the four lower subplanes. The standard and sample example is that of a triangle. Difficult as it is to describe in words which belong to the planes of form, the abstract idea of a triangle is a reality on the arupa levels. It means a non-figure, which is yet a figure. The figure, which is yet no particular figure, is circumscribed by three lines, yet not by any particular lines. Its three angles possess the property of making collectively two right angles, yet they are not particular angles. So let's think of a triangle in an abstract way. When you think of a triangle in an abstract way, we are only dealing with the principles making the triangle, but there is still no shape of a triangle in mind. Okay, so we know that triangle has three lines. These three lines collectively create two right angles. But in our head, we are not seeing a shape of a triangle. It's all just in abstract term. So it's like basically the abstract thought of a triangle, the principle of a triangle, but it's not yet a shape. But on the Arupa levels, this abstract idea of a triangle has real existence. With the sense of the causal body, it is seen or apprehended. It is a fact of consciousness, external to the observer, even though it is not what we usually mean by form. If such an abstract triangle is thrown into a contact with the matter of the Rupa subplanes, instantly it becomes an indefinite number of triangles, each of which has a definite form. There will be triangles of every known shape: equilateral, isosceles, scalene, right angled, and all of these coming into visible existence. If the abstract idea is brought down into within the causal body, the observer becomes a fountain of triangles, which go up in all directions, much as a jet of water sprouts up as a more or less coherent mass, comes down as a fountain separating into innumerable drops of spray. That is perhaps the best physical analogy of the process that can be given. So imagine we are talking abstractly about a triangle. We just know what the triangle means, but there is still no shape yet. It's like just the principle of what triangle means. But when that idea from the causal body, from the abstract thinking, comes down to the rupa levels or to the lower subplanes of the mental plane, then we end up having so many different forms of triangle. Okay, so a triangle may be like this, maybe like this, maybe like um, this, maybe like this. So many different forms and shapes of triangle will come into mind. When from the abstract thought, it comes down to the lower, to the concrete thought, thinking, to the lower subplanes, to the arupa, to the, rupa levels, means levels with form. As was fully explained in the mental body, concrete thought naturally takes the shape of the objects which we thought about. Abstract ideas, when thrown down into the rupa levels, usually represent themselves by all kinds of perfect and most beautiful geometrical figures. It should, however, be remembered that many thoughts which come down here are little more than mere abstractions, become on the mental plane concrete facts. Causal consciousness thus deals with the essence of a thing, whilst the lower mind studies its details. So when we are using the causal body or abstract thinking, we think about the essence of the things. But when we use the mental, but the lower mental subplanes, or what we call the mental body, we are dealing with details, with concrete facts. With the mind, we talk around the subject or endeavor to explain it. With the causal consciousness, we take up the essence of the idea of the subject and move it as a whole, as one moves a piece when playing chess. The causal plane is a world of realities. We no longer deal with emotions, ideas, or conceptions, but with the thing in itself, the essence of the thing. It may be well to describe rather more in detail the process of arriving at causal thought. Whilst the lower mind dwells entirely on mental images obtained from sensations, reasons, and purely concrete objects, and is concerned with the attributes which differentiate one object from another, the ego, using the causal consciousness, having learned to discriminate clearly between objects by dwelling upon their unlikenessness, now begins to group them together by some attribute which appears in a number of objects, otherwise dissimilar, and make a link between them. He draws out, abstracts this common attribute, and sets all objects that possess it apart from the rest that are without it. In this way, he evolves the power of recognizing identity amid diversity, a step towards the much later recognition of the one underlying the many. He thus classifies all that is around him, developing the synthetic faculty and learning to construct as well as to analyze. Okay, so one of the functions of the mental body is to compare and to divide objects based on their differences. Okay, but one of the properties of the causal body is to find similarities and group objects which are similar as one, and to find the link between them. So it's like developing the synthetic faculty to synthesize. Presently, he takes another step and conceives of the common property as an idea, apart from all the objects in which it appears, and thus constructs a kind of mental higher image, higher than the image of a concrete object, the image of an idea that has no phenomenal existence in the world of form, but which exists on the higher levels of the mental plane and affords material on which the ego, the thinker himself, can work. The thinker, with his causal consciousness, sees these ideas and lives among them habitually. As he exercises and develops the power of abstract reasoning, he becomes effective in his own world and begins his life of active functioning in his own sphere. Okay, so using the causal body, we develop abstract reasoning. Using the mental body, we develop concrete thinking and reasoning. Such a man would care little for the life of the senses, or for external observation, or for mental application to images of external objects. His powers are indrawn, no longer rushing outwards in the search of satisfaction. He dwells calmly within himself, engrossed with the problems of philosophy, with the deeper aspects of life and thought, seeking to understand causes rather than troubling himself with effects, and approaching nearer and nearer to the recognition of the one that underlies all the diversities of external nature. On the higher levels of the mental plane, thoughts act with much greater force than on lower levels. Okay, so using the lower vehicles, we focus on understanding the outside world. We use the senses to observe the external world, but using the causal body, we go more inside. We dwell calmly within ourselves. And then we start thinking about life and thought and philosophy and causes, not the effects. And from there, we go nearer to the one that underlies all the diversities of external nature. Now, it says also on the higher levels of the mental plane, thoughts act with much greater force than on the lower levels. And the reason is that as comparatively few are as yet able to think on these higher levels. Any thoughts which are generated there have the field practically to themselves. There are not many other thoughts in that realm with which they have to contend. Okay, so since not many people know how to use the causal body to think, and They are not actually using the causal body to create those abstract thoughts. That's why there are less thoughts to deal with in that level. Therefore, on the higher levels of the mental plane, thoughts act with much greater force. Yes, monopoly in terms of cloud space. The space is just for the ones who are able to use at the moment, because not many people are able to use. Most thoughts of the ordinary man begin in the mental body, on the lower mental levels, and clothe themselves as they descend with the appropriate astral elemental essence. But when a man is active on the causal levels, his thought commences there and clothes itself first in the elemental essence of the lower levels of the mental plane, and is consequently infinitely finer, more penetrating, and in every way more effective. Okay, so that is the reason why those thoughts are more effective. If the thought be directed exclusively to higher objects, its vibrations may be of too fine a character to find expression on the astral plane at all. But if they do affect such lower matter, they will do so with much more far reaching effect than those which are generated so much nearer to the level of that lower matter. Following this principle, a stage further, it is clear that the thought of the initiate taking its rise upon the Buddhic plane above the mental world altogether will clothe itself with the elemental essence of the causal subplane. Similarly, the thought of the adept will pour down from the plane of Atma, wielding the tremendous and wholly incalculable powers of regions beyond the ken of the ordinary humanity. So you see, the higher we are as the arhat or the adept, and we create thoughts in higher levels, those thoughts will be much more stronger than the thoughts created in the lower levels. Students who are not accustomed to causal thought, to thinking in principles, should be careful that they do not, by their efforts to think abstractly, at first cause headaches, which mean, of course, in this instance, that the mechanism of the brain is being strained. So it means if someone is not accustomed to creating causal thoughts, initially when doing that, may feel headache because the brain gets strained. Meditation, practiced regularly for a number of years, should establish a certain tendency of the causal consciousness to be affected by the consciousness in the mental body. When that has been established, abstract thought at the causal level should be possible without the risk of straining the thinking mechanism. That means if a person starts meditating for years, then gradually it becomes possible to create abstract thoughts without straining the thinking mechanism and the brain. When the effort to form an abstract conception, say of a triangle, has been successful, the student may at first feel a little dazed in the attempt to grasp the abstract idea. Later, the consciousness will suddenly change and become clear. That means that the center of consciousness has been transferred from the mental to the causal body, and the student becomes conscious in his causal body of a distinct existence outside himself. Is the strength due to more use of ajna and crown chakra? Okay, have you seen like sometimes when you think, even not abstract, just like concrete thinking, when you use the mental body so much and you think a lot, still cause fatigue and you get like tired. Now imagine you do even more. So people who are not really used to thinking and they do more of the physical work, less thinking, even normal thinking is like very difficult for them Because when they start thinking and analyzing and even like reasoning, they feel very tired very soon because they are not used to this kind of mechanism, this kind of thinking process. Now imagine people who have been accustomed to concrete thinking but not abstract thinking. Same situation happened for them. But when we do meditation regularly and we establish a certain tendency of causal consciousness, then it becomes easier to think abstract and not strain the thinking mechanism. It's just a matter of being accustomed to it and get used to that way of thinking. That is the intuition of the causal body, which recognizes the outer. The intuition of Buddhi, as we shall see in later chapter, recognizes the inner, enabling one to see things from the inside. Okay, so we will discuss about the intuition of the Buddhic level later in future chapters. With the intellectual intuition, one realizes a thing which is outside oneself. So using the intuition of the causal body, we understand, we realize things which are outside ourselves. But when we reach to the Buddhic intuition, then we will see things from inside. That is very interesting. We will talk about it in future chapters. It's like we experience everything as though it's happening to us. Again, the student may be reminded that in spite of external differences of functioning between the higher and lower mind, yet Manas, the thinker, is one, the self in the causal body. It is the source of innumerable energies of vibrations of innumerable kinds. These it sends out, raying outward from itself. The subtlest and finest of these are expressed in the matter of the causal body, which alone is fine enough to respond to them. They form what is sometimes called the pure reason, whose thoughts are abstract, whose method of gaining knowledge is intuition. Its very nature is knowledge, and it recognizes truths as sight, as congruous with itself. It is perhaps somewhat unfortunate that Buddhi is also sometimes spoken of as pure reason, and its faculty is described as that of intuition. As psychology progresses, no doubt appropriate terms will be selected and applied specifically and solely to the distinct function of the causal consciousness and to the Buddhic faculties. So there is a difference between intuition of the Buddhic, means Buddhic intuition, and causal intuition. Although pure reason and intuition is used for both as a term, but actually there is a difference between them. We will talk about Buddhic intuition later on. It was said above of Manas that its very nature is knowledge. That is so because Manas is the reflection in the atomic matter of the mental plane, of the cognitional aspect of the self as knower. So it is said that Manas, the nature of Manas is knowledge. It is therefore possible to unfold a power of knowing truth as sight. This shows itself only when the lower mind with its slow process of reasoning is transcended. For whenever the I, the expression of the self, whose nature is knowledge, comes into contact with a truth, he finds its vibrations regular and therefore capable of producing a coherent image in himself. Whereas the false causes a distorted image out of proportion by its very reflection announcing its nature. Okay, so means the nature of Manas is knowledge. Okay, so means if we transcend our process of reasoning from lower mind to the higher mind, we are able to differentiate between truth and false. And this is because um, whatever is true appear itself as um, regular, producing a coherent image. But whatever is false produce a distorted image out of proportion, from which we will know what is being discussed is false. Okay, so I will read the last paragraph again. For whenever the I, the expression of the self, okay, the higher soul, whose nature is knowledge, comes into contact with a truth, he finds its vibrations regular and therefore capable of producing a coherent image in himself, whereas the false causes a distorted image out of proportion by its very reflection announcing its nature. Thus, intuition develops out of reasoning in the same unbroken manner and without change of essential nature as the eye develops out of touch. The change of manner should not blind us to the orderly and sequential evolution of the faculty. The student will, of course, be careful to distinguish genuine intuition from that pseudo-intuition of the unintelligent, which is merely impulse born of desire and is not higher but lower than reasoning. In the etheric body of man, the Bro chakra or force center, which utilizes the dark blue prana, is associated with the principle of higher manas. Since in Theosophy they discuss about 7 chakras, when we are what you call studying this, we need to go beyond, okay, because the function of the forehead chakra has not been discussed. So to understand this, I recommend you to take the workshop on higher clairvoyance, workshop by Grandmaster Chuakok Sui. Yes, so it's connected with the forehead chakra. But to understand this, because they only discuss about 7 chakras, we should go a bit more beyond and study this from the perspective of pranic healing, discussing about 11 major chakras. Okay, so I won't explain more, but I think with that knowledge, you can already analyze and understand these 2 paragraphs more. Even going back to your psychotherapy and reviewing it, you may understand again more about these two paragraphs. Okay, the last chapter to discuss today, development and faculties of the causal body. In a primitive man, the growth of the causal body is necessary exceedingly slow. As we have seen, it is by the method of exciting sympathetic vibration that the higher qualities developed by the life on lower planes are gradually built into the causal body. But in the life of an undeveloped man, there will be very few feelings or thoughts belonging to the higher world, which can serve as food for the growth of the real man. Okay, as we discussed earlier, only good thoughts, unselfish thoughts, higher thoughts and emotions can reach the causal body and become food for the growth of the real man. But because in an undeveloped person, in a young soul, there is only few of those kind of thoughts and emotions, therefore the development and growth of the causal body is relatively slow. Hence, the growth is slow, for all the rest of life does not aid it. But even the worst of men can commonly show himself on the causal plane, though as an entirely undeveloped entity. His vices, even though continue through life after life, cannot soil the causal body. So all those negative thoughts, negative seeds will not reach the causal body. But it will affect different incarnations because it's the result of the karma. They can, however, make it more and more difficult to develop the opposite virtues. Okay, so means if a person constantly create negative thoughts and emotions, it will not contaminate the higher soul, but it will make it more and more difficult to develop the opposite virtues. For an ego cannot be evil, though he can be imperfect. As Grandmaster says, the higher soul is pure but not perfect. So here also says, higher soul cannot be evil, though he can be imperfect. The qualities which the ego develops cannot be other than good qualities. And when they are well defined, they show themselves in each of all his numerous personalities. Consequently, those personalities can never be guilty of the vices opposite to those good qualities. Okay, so means if we start developing good qualities, those good qualities of the higher soul will influence all our future incarnations in a positive way. A good quality which is lacking may nevertheless be said to exist in the ego, although it has not yet been called into activity. As soon as it is called into activity, its intense vibrations will act upon the lower vehicle, and it will be impossible, as said, for the opposite evil ever again to find place in them. So means if we keep creating good thoughts, good vibrations in the causal body, that will influence the future incarnations positively, and then at some point it will be impossible for the opposite evil ever again to find place in them. So means we will be somehow immune towards the opposite evil qualities of the good qualities that we have already developed. But where there is a gap in the ego, indicating that there is a quality undeveloped, there need not necessarily be a definite vice in the personality, but there is also nothing positive in the personality to prevent the growth of the vice in question. Yes, it's like vaccine protecting us. But there are certain good qualities that we have not developed yet. So these are like gaps in the causal body. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily mean there is an evil opposite to that virtue which we have not yet developed in the incarnated soul, but because there is a gap, there is a possibility that the evil appear in that what you call line or category. Thus, the shortest way to get rid of evil and prevent its reappearance is to fill the gap in the ego, so that the good quality which is thus developed will show itself as an internal part of the man's character through all his futures. So if you want to make sure you are immune, if we want to make sure we are immune from certain evil to appear in our future incarnations and even this incarnation, we need to develop the virtue connected with opposite of that evil and to fill in the gap in the higher soul. Then we are somehow immune. Whilst evil cannot be definitely stored in the causal body, yet the practice of evil may affect the causal body. For every intensification of vice in the lower vehicles, every indulgence in it in the lower worlds tends somehow to dim the luminosity of the opposite virtues in the causal body. Okay, so the evil that a person practices does not reach the causal body, but it will somehow dim the opposite virtue in the causal body. And after some time, the causal body may become like numb in relation to that virtue. So the eye cannot assimilate anything that is evil, for it cannot touch the eye level of consciousness. So it means the higher soul will not get affected by the evil. The ego is not conscious of evil. He knows nothing about it, so that it makes no impression upon him. This is not so much consciousness as unconsciousness, and an unconsciousness which resists impressions of the good of the opposite kind. So means continuous practice of evil or certain vice, it does not create evil effect on the higher soul, but because there is unconsciousness in the higher soul in relation to that virtue, an unconsciousness which resists, that will create resistance towards the good of the opposite kind. Okay, so that's how the practice of evil affects the higher soul. It will create some kind of numbness and then some kind of resistance towards the opposite good quality. This result was observed when, in studying past lives, an endeavor was made to understand how the causal body was not injured through a number of savage lives. So there are actually a few books in which Theosophy masters Leadbeater and, if I'm not mistaken, Annie Besant try to look at the previous incarnations of certain souls and then write a book. One is called Lives of Orion, another one is Lives of Alcyon, and it's like um, study on reincarnation and different lives of one soul. So here a study was made to see what was the effect of a number of savage lives on the causal body. In very prolonged cases where there was an abnormal number of such lives, this effect of numbness was noted, brought about by the repeated beating up it of evil over a long period of time. A number of lives then had to be spent in restoring, so to say, the responsive vitality to that portion of the causal body. Such cases, however, are abnormal. We may pursue the study of the effects of evil still further. Where evil is subtle and persistent, it drags away, if the expression be permitted, something of the individual himself. Okay, question. When we don't know the gap, how do you create the vaccine? The vaccine uh, is through character building. In every incarnation, we need to develop the virtues and get rid of vices. That's why in our Hatha Yoga, Grandmaster Chua Sui discusses about 5 pillars, 5 virtues. And then the 5 virtues need to be practiced over and over again every year. So it's like repeat, 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 and there is no end to it. So after our Hatha Yoga, the study of virtues start and continues for a whole lifetime. Whether we have that voice already or not, or whether it's just a seed, or whether it will appear in the future, whatever, doesn't matter. We still continue practicing all the 5 virtues repeatedly, continually, so that we can get rid of the vices and we can develop the virtues. And when we develop the virtue, we will be immune from that vice, even in future incarnation. So it's like a continuous practice. That's why our Hatha Yoga is like really a way of life. And not only for this incarnation, but it's like for future incarnation. It's like for the development of the soul. Yes, virtues. So when it's talking about evil, it's talking about vices. When it's talking about the opposite of the evil, it's talking about the virtues. If evil be continually followed, the mental body becomes so entangled with the astral body that after death it cannot free itself entirely. Some of its very substance is torn away from it, and when the astral body in its turn dies and disintegrates, The matter of the mental body, which has been wrenched away, also goes back to the general stock of mental matter, and is thus lost to the individual. In ordinary cases, the harm done to the causal body does not go further than this. We shall deal with the aspect of our subject in more technical detail in chapter 25. In chapter 25, we will discuss further about the negative effects of practice, like having or practicing a terrible life, full of vices and evil. Where, however, the ego has become strong, both in intellect and in will, without at the same time increasing in unselfishness and love, it contracts itself round its own separated center, instead of expanding as it grows. It thus builds around it a wall of selfishness, and uses its developing powers for itself, instead of for others. In such cases, there arises the possibility alluded to in so many of the world scriptures of the ego setting himself consciously against the good law, of fighting deliberately against evolution. This is even worse than practicing vices, or like common vices, I mean. So when the person is developing the intelligence, the will, but in a selfish way, but more because of using it for oneself rather than helping other people, and also develop pride, then that ego set himself consciously against the good law and fights against it. That is even worse than like simple vices. Then the causal body itself shows the dark hues. You, even in an undeveloped person, undeveloped soul, you saw the causal body had just very few colors, but at least brilliant, bright colors. But in this case, the causal body shows the dark hues brought about by contraction, and loses the dazzling radiance which in its characteristic property. Harm such as this cannot be wrought by an ego who is poorly developed, nor by ordinary passional or mental faults. To effect injuries so far reaching, the ego must be highly evolved and must have its energies awakened on the mental plane. It is for this reason that ambition, pride, and powers of the intellect used for selfish aims are so far more dangerous and deadly in their effects than the more palpable faults of the lower nature. Okay, so means if someone is developed in the mental body and it's powerful and its intelligence and use all these powers selfishly and because of pride, this has far more worst effect than to be less developed or to be a young soul or to do like simple mistakes. So that the Pharisee is often further from the kingdom of God than the publican and sinner. Means a person who is so called developed or spiritual but is not actually spiritual, but using all the power for the benefit of the self for selfish reasons and has a lot of pride, is far from kingdom of heaven compared to a person who is a sinner. Along this line is developed the black magician. Same is like black magician. Black magicians are also very powerful, very intelligent, very willful, but they use this to harm the humanity and use for selfish reasons. The man who conquers passion and desire develops will and the higher powers of the mind, not to offer them as forces to help forward the evolution of the whole, but in order to grasp all he can for himself, as a unit to hold and not to share. So this is far worse than just being a simple sinner. Such men set themselves to maintain separation as against unity, striving to retard it instead of to quicken evolution. So basically, they try to slow down the evolution of humanity. They want things for themselves for selfish reasons. Instead of pushing humanity forward, they create obstruction. They vibrate in discord with the whole instead of harmony and are in danger of that rendering of the ego himself, which means the loss of all the fruits of evolution. We will discuss about this in future chapters, which is like really terrible, um, what you call, results will reach from this. All those who are beginning to understand something of the causal body can make its evolution a definite object in life. Okay, so it means that we are now studying about the causal body. We are understanding about the higher soul, the concept of the soul. You have also discussed this in Achieving Oneness workshop, in our Hatha Yoga workshop. So this should be a definite object, purpose in our life. They can strive to think, feel, and act unselfishly, and so contribute to its growth and activity. Life after life, this evolution of the individual proceeds, and in aiding its growth by conscious effort, we are working in harmony with the divine will and carrying out the purpose for which we are here. Nothing good that is once woven into the causal body can ever be lost or dissipated, for this is the man that lives so long as he remains man. Thus, we see that by the law of evolution, everything that is evil, however strong it may be, has within itself the germs of its own destruction, while everything that is good has in, has in it the seed of immortality. The secret of this lies in the fact that everything evil is inharmonious because it sets itself against the cosmic law. So, whatever which is evil eventually will disintegrate, will disappear, will get destructed. Whatever which is good has the seeds of immortality. Everything that is good, on the other hand, being in harmony with the law, is taken on by it and carried forward. It becomes part of the stream of evolution, of that, not ourselves, which makes for righteousness, and therefore can never perish or be destroyed. We may conceive of all the experience of a man as passing through a fine sieve or mesh. Only that which is good can pass through. That which is evil is left behind and get rejected. Even though by our folly we may make the growth slower than it need be, nonetheless everything we contribute to it, however little, lasts in it forever and is our possession for all the ages that lie in front. So means each person, whatever good, whatever unselfish, whatever um, progress, even though slow, they create, that lasts forever. And whatever evil eventually will be left behind. Whilst nothing evil can be stored in the causal body, it is however stored, if we may so use the term, in the lower vehicles to which it pertains. For under the law of justice, every man must receive the result of his own actions, be they bad or good. So it means whatever evil we do, whatever negative karma we create does not reach the causal body, does not affect the ego basically, but they get stored in the vehicles. And then each person will face the consequences of the action, good or bad. More precisely, the result of evil is stored in the mental unit and in the astral and physical permanent atoms. Good actions and thoughts also, of course, produce results in the lower planes. But in addition to that, they have the immensely higher and permanent effect upon the causal body. Okay, so whatever experiences we create which are evil, they get stored in the mental unit and astral and physical permanent atom. So in the future incarnations, the result of which is calculated um, by the laws of karma, we have to face the consequences. Whatever good actions produce result in the lower planes, but also they will affect the causal body in a positive way. So the pouring into the causal body of faculties acquired by the personality is analogous to the pouring into the group soul of the experiences acquired by the forms in which portions of the group soul incarnate. Thus, for example, supposing that the quality of accuracy is developed in a personality, when that quality goes back to the ego, in the causal body, the same amount has to be spread over the whole causal body. The amount which was quite sufficient to make one personality very accurate, when it goes into the ego, is only a fraction part of his requirements. He may consequently have many lives to develop enough of the quality to make it prominent in the next life, especially as the ego does not put into the next personality the same piece of himself, but simply a piece of the whole mass of himself. The student must all through his studies recollect that the causal body is not the ego, but only such matter of the higher mental plane which has been vivified and which expresses the qualities the ego has acquired. Okay, now imagine you have a bucket of water and then you have one glass of water. Now the glass of water through the experiences, for example, becomes very intense red color. I'm just giving an example, okay? This red color, let's say it is connected with one good quality that this incarnated soul has acquired. Now, when this incarnated soul goes back to the higher soul and pour whatever is the content of the cup inside that bucket, that red dye will be diluted in the whole bucket. Okay, so means that quality which was a prominent quality of that incarnated soul developed in one incarnation, when goes back to that bucket, it becomes diluted. And in the next incarnation, when a portion of the higher soul again incarnate as the incarnated soul, it will have um, it will not have that very intense color, that very intense quality that the previous incarnated soul generated, but the diluted one. So this happens again and again and again, and this quality needs to be developed again and again and again until the higher soul or that bucket has that quality very strongly. Then only we can say that that quality is almost like perfected. I hope I was able to express or to explain um, properly what was meant by this portion of the book. Furthermore, in the case of a developed man, the mental body becomes a reflection of the causal body, since the man learns to follow solely the promptings of the higher self and to guide his reason exclusively by them. He can mold it after the high visions of the planes beyond his own, of which he has caught a glimpse in his highest moments, and can thus convey downwards and outwards ideas to which the mental body would otherwise be unable to respond. Such ideas are the inspirations of genius that flash down into the mind with dazzling light and illuminate a world. Okay, so some of these ideas from the higher levels come down and then illuminate the whole world. So we call it like inspirations of genius. Genius, which is of the ego, sees instead of arguing. True intuition is one of its faculties. The lower manas or mind, working in the brain apparatus, arranges facts gathered by observation, balances them one against the other, and draws conclusions from them. By the process of rationalization, it operates using the methods of induction and deduction. Intuition, on the other hand, as etymology indicates, is insight, looking within, a process as direct and swift as physical sight. So In the basic workshop itself, Grandmaster, when we are talking about what you call meditation twin hearts, we say that the meditation twin hearts helps to develop the intuition. And the difference between intuition and intellect is that intellect is observation, analysis, drawing conclusions, and it requires time, effort, and also mistakes. But intuition is direct knowing, and that intuition is one of the faculties of the higher soul. Okay, so means when our intuition is developed, we get glimpse, we get insights, we get ideas from the higher soul. How can we intensify the production of the quality in a few lifetimes? Okay, Grandmaster, I remember used to say, we always have an option to evolve in a slow lane, to evolve in a medium lane, or to evolve in a fast lane. That is our choice. We have a choice to make. We have free will to decide. Now, if we choose slow lane, then we spend time on spiritual practice, character building, evolution and development, minimal, not so much, but still we spend some time on it. Medium lane means at least 4 times in a week, do the meditation, focus on spiritual practices, and so on. Fast lane means every day spiritual practice, at least 2-3 hours spent on our purification, meditation, spiritual practice, service, tithing, helping the whole world. So in our Hatha Yoga workshop, Grandmaster has given this pathway, or how to say roadmap, to evolve in a fast lane. So if we choose that, after taking our Hatha Yoga, we just need to follow the simple instructions. It has 5 pillars, 5 virtues, as we know. And so 5 pillars make sure the evolution is fast but well-rounded. So like any building, it has pillars. So all the 5 pillars are important. If one pillar is not there, the building may collapse from that side. So all the 5 pillars are important aspects of one's balanced and well-rounded evolution. Okay, and it makes sure it fast, safe, and steady. So we just need to follow simple instructions, and if we decide we want to grow fast, we also need to do service and tithing in proportion. We also need to focus on purification, meditation, and all of this. Based on my thinking, evolution is a path that everybody needs to tread anyway. Okay, so why not in one incarnation like this one, when we have access to priceless teachings like pranic healing and Hatha Yoga, why not we focus on that and we use the opportunity to grow fast? Because in every incarnation, first 15-20 years, we are still too young to understand right from wrong. So some years will be not really used properly just until we reach to the age that we can comprehend, we can understand. And then we don't know if we will have access to a good teacher, good teaching in every incarnation. So in one incarnation, when we already have access, we have to take the opportunity and grow fast and develop those virtues. Because as the book says, when we develop those virtues to a high degree, we will be immune from the vices connected with those virtues. So that is priceless because it's eternal. It will remain with us throughout. So proof is unnecessary because it is above and beyond reason. This is talking about intuition. When we are using intellect, we have to validate, we have to analyze, we have to study. But when we are dealing with intuition, proof is unnecessary because it is above and beyond reason. Great care must, of course, be taken to distinguish mere comic impulse from true intuition. It is only when the desires and appetites of the lower comic means emotional, self are stilled and at rest that the voice of the higher mind can make itself heard in the lower personalities. So we need to be able to distinguish between inner voice and inner noise. Sometimes when we have lots of negative thoughts, emotions, or even like not negative, but lots of thoughts, lots of desires, then we might be misled by the inner noise. But when we purify ourselves from all of those, and then we develop the intuition through regular meditation and spiritual practice, then only we can get access to inner voice, which is beyond reason, which is called intuition. In her article on genius, Madame Blavatsky explained this matter clearly. What we call the manifestations of genius in a person are only the more or less successful efforts of the ego to assert itself through its outer objective form. The egos of a Newton or Shakespeare are of the same essence and substance as the egos of a fool or even an idiot. No ego differs from another ego in its primordial or original essence and nature. That which makes of one mortal a great man and of another a vulgar, silly person is the quality and makeup of the shell or casing, the adequacy or inadequacy of brain and body to transmit and give expression to the light of the real inner man, the ego. So it means the higher soul is pure but not perfect. Everybody's higher soul is pure. But how come some people can access the higher soul and get insights and intuition, and some people cannot? That depends on the vehicles. So it means if we want to access to higher soul and get intuition, get inner guidance, we need to prepare our bodies. That's why Grandmaster says purification is very important. To use a familiar simile, physical man is the instruments, the ego, the performing artist. The potentiality of perfect melody rests in the instrument, and no skills of the artist can awaken faultless harmony out of a broken or badly constructed instrument. This harmony depends on the fidelity of transmission by word and act to the objective plane of the unspoken divine thought in the very depths of man's subjective or inner nature, in a word, of his ego. Mental ability, intellectual strength, acuteness, subtlety are manifestations of lower manas in man. They may reach as far as what Madame Blavatsky spoke of as artificial genius. At the present stage of human evolution, higher manas can but rarely manifest itself. Occasional flashes of it are what we call true genius. Okay, so means sometimes the higher soul really wants to communicate with the incarnated soul and gives insight, guidance, intuition, but because the bodies are so engrossed into materiality, into negative thoughts, emotions, and everything, it's not possible. So means it's like a broken or badly constructed instrument. No matter how talented the artist or the higher soul is, not able to create harmony because the vehicles are not are broken or not like ready. But when through spiritual practice we purify the vehicles, we remove negative thoughts, emotions, energies, contamination. We focus on proper diet, proper hygiene, and everything. We make this temple, they call the body the temple. We create the temple ready, we create the bodies, we make the bodies ready, then we will receive the intuition from the higher soul. And that appears as flashes, and that is genius in the sense that we talk about. Science has proven that their brain is the same as any regular person. Yes, exactly. So the difference is higher soul is able to communicate. Higher soul is able to send impressions. Okay? And their brain is ready to receive. Before considering the possibility of functioning consciously on the causal plane, we may remind ourselves that for a man still attached to the physical body to move in full consciousness on the mental plane, for example, either the lower or higher mental, he must be either an adept or one of their initiated pupils. For until a student has been taught by his master how to use his mental body, he will be unable to move with freedom even upon its lower levels. Okay, so to function consciously during physical life upon the higher levels denotes, of course, still greater advancement, for it means the unification of the man, so that down here he is no longer a mere personality, more or less influenced by the individuality above, but is himself that individuality or ego. Means they are one. Incarnated soul and higher soul are one, united. We have achieved yoga or union. He is certainly still trammeled and confined by a body, but nevertheless he has within him the power and knowledge of a highly developed ego. At present, most people are not more than just conscious in the causal body. They can work only in the matter of the third subplane, the lowest part of the causal body. And in fact, only the lowest matter, even of that, is usually in operation. When they are on the path, the second subplane opens up. The adept, of course, uses the whole causal body, while his consciousness is on the physical plane. Okay, so as of now, um, most people have not really able, like, developed enough to use all the subplanes of the causal body, mostly just the lowest part of the lowest matter of the lowest subplane of the causal body. Passing now to more specific and detailed powers of the causal body, it will be recollected as explained in the two preceding volumes of the series. That is not possible for a man to pass to another planet for our chain, either in his astral or his mental body. So this was explained before. In the causal body, however, when very highly developed, this achievement is possible, though even then by no means with the ease or the rapidity with which it can be done on the Buddhic plane, by those who have succeeded in raising their consciousness to that level. So, but using the causal body is possible to experience other planets. Using Buddhic plane, even better, easier. It appears, however, that a causal body would not normally be able to move in interstellar space. This was explained in the study of the solar system. In that space, it seems that the atoms lie apart and equidistant, and this is probably their normal condition when undisturbed. That is what is meant by speaking of the atoms as free. So because in the interstellar space, the atoms are free, um, movement using movement in that space is not possible. Within the atmosphere of a planet, they are never found at all in that state, for even when they are not grouped in forms, they are at any rate enormously compressed by the force of attraction. So in interplanetary space, the conditions are probably not exactly the same as in interstellar space, for there may be a great deal of disturbance due to cosmic and meteoric matter and also the tremendous attraction of the sun produces a considerable compression within the limits of this system. Hence, the atomic matter of a man's causal body is crushed together by attraction into a definite and quite dense shape, even though the atoms are in no way altered in themselves and are not grouped into molecules. While such a body can exist comfortably on its own atomic plane, in the neighborhood of a planet where the atomic matter is compressed, it would not be able to move or function in faraway space where the atoms are free. So it means using the causal body, a person is able to move freely in interplanetary space because the atoms there are compressed because of comic and meteoric matter and also the attraction of the sun. But it's not possible to move freely in interstellar space because the atoms there are free and not compressed. Okay, let me see how much left to finish. Okay, should we finish here because it's past 9 and we continue the rest next chapter, or do you want to continue and finish this chapter? So the next chapter we can start from chapter 19. What do you think? Think a few pages left. Do you want to continue or shall we finish the session? Okay, so let's continue and finish this. The power of magnification belongs to the causal body and is associated with the brow chakra, the fourth central between the eyebrows. Okay, this one, whatever we are discussing now, you will understand more if you attend the higher clairvoyance workshop by Grandmaster. So I will just read through it and try to explain some portion of it, but how to use it is explained in the higher clairvoyance workshop. From the central portion of this chakra, what may be called a tiny microscope is projected, having for its lens only one atom. This is the power of magnification, which belongs to the brow chakra. Here it says the Ajna chakra. In this way, an organ is produced commensurate in size with the minute objects to be observed. The atom employed may be either physical, astral, or mental, but whichever it is, it needs a special preparation. All its spirilla must be opened up so that it is just as it will be in the seventh round of our chain of worlds. If an atom of a level lower than the causal be used as an eyepiece, a system of reflecting counterparts must be introduced. The atom can be adjusted to any subplane so that any required degree of magnification can be applied in order to suit the object which is being examined. A further extension of the same power enables the operator to focus his own consciousness in the lens through which he is looking and then to project it to the distant points. This is talking about clairvoyance. This part is about magnification, when we want to see something which is small, like magnified. The same power by different arrangement can be used for diminishing purposes. When one wishes to view as a whole something far too large to be taken in at once by ordinary vision. So the same technique can be used when we want to see something which is huge in a smaller format. So we can observe the whole at once. The sight of the causal body enables one to foresee the future to some extent. Even with physical senses, one may sometimes foretell certain things. Okay, so when a person in develops the clairvoyance or the sight of the causal body, that person can foresee the future. Now, the book is saying even with physical senses, we can somehow foretell certain things. For example, if we see a man leading a life of debauchery, we may safely predict that unless he changes, he will presently lose health and fortune. So imagine you see someone is addicted to drugs, to alcohol, to sex. So even using our own physical senses, we can somehow foresee that if this person doesn't change, this person will have a miserable future because this person will lose health and fortune. But what we cannot tell with that physical sense is that whether he will change or not. Okay, so with the physical senses, we cannot say if this person is going to change in the future or not. But we can say if this person doesn't change, this will happen to him in the future. He will lose health and fortune. But a man who has a sort of causal body could often tell this because to him the reverse forces of other world be visible. So it means if a person has sight of causal body, he or she can tell whether this person who is now addicted to, let's say, drugs is able to give up and change or not. He could see what the ego thought of it all and whether he was strong enough to interfere. No merely physical prediction is certain because so many of the causes which influence life cannot be seen on this lower plane. But when the consciousness is raised to higher planes, we can see more of the causes and so can come nearer to calculating the effects. So means when we are using physical senses to foresee the future, we cannot um, we cannot predict the changes, okay, like because there are so many causes which can influence life which we cannot see in the physical or lower plane. But when we use the higher or the causal body side, because we can see the causes, from the causes we can calculate the effects, so we are able to see if change is going to happen or not. So it is of course easier to foresee the future of an undeveloped man than of one more advanced. For the ordinary man has little willpower. Karma assigns him certain surroundings, and he is the creature of those surroundings. He accepts fate marked out for him because he does not know what he can alter it. So means it's easier to foresee the life of an undeveloped person because the undeveloped person doesn't know how karma works. So the undeveloped person cannot alter karma, cannot go beyond karma, cannot harness karma to change his future. But if a person is developed, then the person knows how to use the law of karma to change his future. A more developed man, however, takes hold of his destiny and molds it. He makes his future what he wills it to be, counteracting the karma of the past by setting fresh forces in motion. Hence, his future is not so easily predictable. But no doubt, even in this case, an adept who could see the latent will could also calculate how he would use it. If a man raises his consciousness to the highest subdivision of the causal body and focuses it exclusively in the atomic matter of the mental plane, he has before him three possibilities of moving his consciousness, which correspond to some extent with the three dimensions of space. Obviously, one, a way is open to him to move it downward into the second subplane of the mental or upward into the lowest subplane of the buddhic, provided, of course, that he has developed his buddhic body sufficiently to be able to utilize it as a vehicle. Number two, a second line of movement is the shortcut from the atomic subdivision of one plane to the corresponding atomic division of the plane above or below without touching any of the intermediate subplanes. And three, the third possibility is not so much a movement along another line at right angles to both of these others, but rather a possibility to looking up such a line, the line that joins the ego and the monad, much as a man at the bottom of a well might look up at a star in the sky above him. So, for there is a direct line of communication between the atomic subplane of the mental in the lowest cosmic plane and the corresponding atomic mental in the cosmic mental plane. Although we are as yet infinitely far from being able to climb upward by that line, yet Leadbeater states that once at least the experience came of being able to look up it for a moment. What is seen, he says, it is hopeless to try to describe, for no human words can give the least idea of it. But at least this much emerges with a certitude that can never be shaken, that what we have until now supposed to be our consciousness, our intellect, is simply not ours at all, but His. Not even a reflection of His, but literally and truly a part of His consciousness, a part of His intellect. Some little help in understanding this may be derived from the knowledge that the human ego itself is a manifestation of the third outpouring, which comes from His first aspect, the eternal and all-loving Father. So that observation that Leadbeater had proved again that we are actually part of God. We are part of His consciousness, not only a reflection, but actually a part of His consciousness. The growth and development of the causal body is greatly assisted by the work of the masters, for they deal more with egos in their causal bodies than with the lower vehicles of men. They devote themselves to the pouring of spiritual influence upon men, raying out as the sunlight radiates upon flowers, thereby evoking from them all that is noblest and best in them, and so promoting their growth. Many people are sometimes conscious of helpful influences of this description, but are quite unable to trace them to their source. Okay, so means the growth and development of the causal body is assisted by the masters. There are so many masters and higher beings who are helping and devoting themselves to helping the evolution of the human kind. Okay, we have reached chapter 19. This was quite a long study. I hope, but it was quite interesting. I think I enjoyed. I hope you have enjoyed it also. So thank you so much for joining for this session. So next chapter, we will focus on life after death. We will discuss about the fifth heaven, the sixth heaven, and we will discuss, I think, about Trishna, which is the desire that makes the higher soul reincarnate as the incarnated soul in every incarnation, and a lot more interesting topics. So thank you so much. Let's finish with a short invocation. Please close your eyes. Inhale and exhale slowly and deeply. Mentally say to the Supreme Being, Divine Father, Divine Mother, and all the great, great ones, thank you for all of your priceless beings, priceless teachings, for divine light, divine love, and divine power, divine guidance, help, and protection. Thank you for helping us evolve. Thank you for illuminating our minds. Thank you for your guidance, help, and protection. Although we may not realize because of the limitations of our brains, but we are truly grateful for all the help, all the guidance, all the blessings in every incarnation. Thank you so much in full faith. Inhale slowly, inhale all the blessings. Exhale slowly and be aware of your whole body. Inhale slowly. Exhale slowly. Inhale slowly, inhale all the blessings. And exhale slowly. When you are comfortable, gently open your eyes with a big, big smile. Atma Namaste. Thank you so much. See you next week for the next study session of the book. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Atma Namaste.